the belief behind that is that HE assessment currently works unevenly for students of colour, and it looks at what practitioners can do to measurably reduce those, as he calls them, wicked inequities.
Hello and welcome to the Test Community Network. My name's Tim Burnett. I hope you're all safe and well. This week we're talking about the assessment evolution. I had a great conversation with the team at Cambridge Assessment Network. They've got an upcoming conference and they've got a wonderful array of courses on offer for assessment professionals like you and I to kind of really build on their skills and knowledge within the assessment practice. So I'll go to that interview with Rosie and Simon very shortly. Just as ever, anything you encounter today, you can go to the testcommunity.network for more information. So on there's the marketplace, there's the podcast player, and there's the events list of over 300 in-person events for this year, so that's let alone the virtual ones as well. You can subscribe for free and receive a nice weekly digest taking you directly into those resources as they come up. And if you go to the Test Community Network, you can subscribe to that. I have two excellent webinars coming up. I'm going to share this screen here. So on the 27th of February, I'm going to be running another AI superpower session. This time we're going to be looking at research tools. So there's some really quite innovative research solutions that come out. Gemini's research tool. There's another one from OpenAI at the moment. They've called it Deep Research. Both of them called it the same thing. To be fair, Google would call it first. But then also there's agentic opportunities to use Zapier agents to do research. And I've got a couple of use cases I want to share with you on there, and I'll kind of give you a demo on how to do that. And that effectively does research while you sleep, if you think of that one. So, so some really good, interesting takeaway tools for you there to try and learn. And then on the 4th of March, ahead of the Innovations Conference, I've pulled together three of the most amazing psychometricians in the industry. We've got Leslie Thomas, we've got Amanda Danis, and we've got Liberty Munson. And we're going to be looking at the hype and fear around AI and how to stay grounded in your kind of perusal of all the amazing solutions and ideas and thoughts and threats that are out there. Stay grounded in your assessment work. So I'm really looking forward to a really good panel conversation with these three wonderful people. So back to today's session. I'll give you a rundown of other things we've got coming up. So we've got on the 12th of February, there's the AALHE Assessment Learning Exchange. That's a virtual conference. You can have a look at that. And next week as well, we have the RM Bridging AI in Assessment. That's an in-person event that's taking place at International Baccalaureate. And I hear they've got some amazing speakers. I actually might be one of them. So I'm going to be talking about AI and running a little bit of a workshop at that as well. I'm also doing a AO forum, assessment organization forum event at for the EAA next week as well. If anyone's attending that, I look forward to seeing you there. I'll be running a workshop. We have the e-learning awards in person. If you're dedicated to achieve one of those, and that's fantastic. The AI Education 25 virtual conference. We have the NAELPA in-person conference coming on as well. AO Forum as well. This is looking a little bit further ahead. So Ben and the team at Gordon Associates have been planning this. It's going to be a great conference. It always is a really good one down in London. Then on the marketplace, we've got the report. We've got the art of crafting prompts. So this was prompted by a colleague of mine who was asking me questions about grading prompts, and I thought I'd have a quick look into it, and I did some research on it, and this is one of the interesting articles that I've found, as well as my own kind of tools that I've built for marking as well, just to test out the principles there as well. So give me a shout if you want to talk about that. Systematic review of the impact of artificial intelligence educational outcomes in health professions. So if you, that's from the BMC Medical, so it's worth checking that if you're involved in healthcare and medical. And then we've got the news from the Global Education Must Integrate AI. That's from the UN as well, so it's worth checking that out. And then on the podcast side, we've got small changes you can make to make your classroom more neurodiverse, diversity affirming, so worth checking that out. So on to today's conversation. I'm in conversation with Rosie and Simon, and we're talking about the amazing courses that are coming up, EDIB, and the conference they have come along as well. So here's me in conversation with Rosie and Simon. Simon, welcome. Thank you for joining me. I hope you're both well.
Hi, Tim. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
No, it's good. It's good. Well, we're going to talk a bit more about some of the work and some of the, I suppose, courses and opportunities for people to learn and engage on the subject of assessment from yourselves. But before we go into that, could you just introduce yourselves? Rosie, do you want to go first, then Simon?
Sure. So I'm Rosie Applin. I'm the Senior Communications Manager in the Assessment Network team.
And I'm Simon Child. I'm the Head of Assessment Training at the Cambridge Assessment Network. So I'm responsible for the full portfolio, if you like, of services in relation to assessment professional development that we offer at the network.
Excellent. So just for anyone who doesn't know anything about the Assessment Network in Cambridge, Simon, do you want to tell us a bit more about that, or Rosie? I don't mind.
Simon.
Yeah. So the Assessment Network was started, actually, we've just found out in the last week, about 20 years ago, almost exactly 20 years ago. And the mission at that time, and it's still the mission now, is to essentially promote and champion assessment expertise wherever assessment is done, whether it's in schools, professional bodies, universities, because we know that fundamentally assessment is done everywhere. And we think it's a really important part of the overall educational experience. So really, that's what the network does, try and improve practice in that very important area of education.
Yeah, we're part of Cambridge University Press and Assessment, and we also have a sort of membership scheme where we bring together assessment practitioners from all around the world, as Simon said, working in lots of different sectors and disciplines, but all kind of united by the fact that they really want to get assessment right for learners.
Perfect. No, it sounds like a very worthwhile experience and worth lots of people getting involved in. I was quite lucky to be asked by two members of your team, Claire and Gwen, and James as well, to chair a session they gave at the European Association of Test Publishers Conference, where we talked about EDIB. And I must admit, it was because equity, diversity, and inclusion has been kind of a core thing, but belonging was a bit more of a new area for me, so I found it quite an interesting session. And you've got a new course coming up about this. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that, Simon?
Yes, we do. It's a course that we've launched in the last couple of months, and as you say, we're focusing very much on the idea of embedding equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging into assessment practice. And the reason for that is that we actually believe that embedding EDIB principles into assessment generally is useful in terms of helping people really show what they can do in any kind of assessment event, because for the assessments to be as effective as they can be in terms of meeting the different purposes that they may have, we need to make sure that there are no barriers to students or to learners being able to demonstrate what they do in any one particular time. So the idea of belonging is actually quite an important element of that, because if the way that the assessment is being presented, either that's something to do with the even something as simple as the font or the imagery that's being used, and people don't feel that they connect with the task that's been set for them within the assessment design, that will mean that they're not performing quite as well as they could potentially do. And so in the course itself, we look at a lot of practical tips and potential solutions for essentially allowing people to analyze their own strategies for designing assessment, and thinking about practical ways of opening up assessment design to try and be as inclusive as possible, using things like universal design for assessment principles. So within the course, we introduce those ideas and give people lots of different ways to think about it to hopefully improve their practice going forward. So the course itself is it's quite a big course in the sense that it's 16 hours, and I think that in some ways demonstrates how important the topic is, because we think that the deeper the learning in this particular area, it's a key set of skills and strategies that should be able to use again and again, and that's something that we really value in this particular course.
And what kind of people would take that course then? Who would you recommend, or who's it kind of designed for?
Well, we have a number of different groups of practitioners that we generally target with a course such as this. So we would say for people who are working with particular diverse populations or cohorts of students would be the kind of key group that we're thinking of. So university context would be an obvious example, perhaps, where you've got overseas students that you're showing a particular subject discipline, but you're trying to open up the possibility for them to perform as well as they can do, because they're obviously coming into a new environment, a new culture, and so on. And in school environment as well, obviously, the increase in diversity of thought and ideas and so on is a really important area of education that obviously in the political sphere people are really interested in thinking a lot about. So, but fundamentally speaking, it's anyone who is doing assessment either for a formative or a summative purpose that should be able to get some good value out of the course, because you never know where diversity is actually going to present itself, and actually it can actually be hidden in cases of things like neurodiversity and so on. So being aware of all those things is actually quite an eye-opener for people that have, when we've engaged people with the course for the pilot, for example, we've often experienced kind of awareness raising conclusions that, oh, I need to find out more about this, and the course actually helps with that journey as well.
Yeah, I can imagine it's one of those subjects where, until you would take something like this, there's probably areas and components and parts and things that you've just never even considered, because part of it is about being able to relate, isn't it? And if you're not exposed to certain worlds and societies and experiences, then you just don't appreciate, do you, the difficulties that people can face.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that this course and other later courses will do as well is get people to essentially slow down and be more conscious in their planning of their assessment design, and actually almost creating their own mental checklist for, have I considered the implications for inclusion, or have I used universal design principles in designing this assessment? Have I taken appropriate accommodations for different people with, say, neurodiversity or other things that are related to that? So that step back and slowing down, making people think consciously about these things is I think a life skill that people can take forward beyond the course.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds good. So any other courses coming up as well?
We've got quite a range of courses coming up, actually. Yeah, we do have quite a comprehensive range. I think one that's just on the horizon is our multiple choice questions. We've got sort of 2 variations of that coming up soon. Yeah, so similar to the EDIB course in many ways, is that we know that multiple choice questions are being used all around the world for all sorts of different reasons. But we also know that they're very difficult to get right. So one question that people come up to us with is, how do we actually assess anything more than just knowledge for multiple choice? How do we stop people just learning things by rote and being able to perform them, especially when they know that it's a multiple choice test that they'll be getting at the end of a period of learning, such as a unit of a course or something. So one of the things that we thought was really important for us to develop a workshop for would be for people to, again, be aware of the advantages and disadvantages of MCQs, the various washback effects that it may have on teaching and learning, such as rote learning, but also the practical skills in terms of how to go beyond things like assessing rote knowledge. So these higher order skills, such as evaluation or application. And so again, the idea of the workshop that we're running from the 4th of February to the 18th of February, so that's 3 sessions of 90 minutes. And so it's a 4.5 hour workshop in terms of its total time, would be to help them learn, help the participants learn effective ways to both design multiple choice question assessments, but also review them as well in part of the design process, with the idea of getting to these higher order skills, which really opens up the possibilities for what MCQs can do in practice.
And as part of the kind of planning for that and the structure, obviously AI has come along and is quite abundant in its availability, and we're hearing today everyone's going mad about DeepSeek and all these things there. It's going nuts, isn't it? But as part of that course, is that something that's laid into there to considerations around AI?
Yeah, in the second session of the workshop, we actually look at the idea of prompt engineering for multiple choice questions. So there's quite a lot of, it's relatively early literature and ideas about what the best prompts would be for multiple choice questions. So we'll go through quite a few of those. And we set up some practical activities where we get people to use some of the prompt strategies in their own context, and then use the kind of checklist and the human side, if you like, in terms of the quality review process and some of the principles about what good design is, and get people to reflect on that as well. So in many ways, it reflects the kind of process that practitioners will be using in real life, where they're asking DeepSeek or another AI generator of your choice to come up with these ideas. But it acknowledges the fact that fundamentally it's a human endeavor, such as all assessment. So the idea of what we bring to the table in terms of our criticality of what's being produced is really important, and people definitely come away with that at the end of this course.
Yeah, I suppose one of the challenges that people are always a bit fearful in terms of using large language models to generate their items is the idea that, are they putting it out there publicly? Who's the publisher, right, copyright, those kind of things. But I suppose just that DeepSeek thing, I'm reading and seeing more about the ability to be able to download those models and build on top of them locally, so you're not necessarily sharing that stuff out. So it's going to be quite interesting, isn't it? It's kind of gone beyond that. Well, this is nice, but we can't really use public large language models to do this. To, well, actually, there might be some stronger potential here as part of that development process. Drafting distractors is those kind of things, just huge time saving opportunities, aren't there? Excellent. So it's all very exciting. We'll include notes to the courses in the details, but we've got a conference coming up as well.
We do indeed.
Yes. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so we've got our second ever Assessment Horizons conference. So we ran the first one last year, and it was popular, so we've decided to run it again. But this year it's a 2-day program, so it's going to be on the 29th and 30th of April. And I mean, just to sort of segue on from the AI discussion there, I mean, it's come up, we ran a survey just to sort of determine what the assessment community would be interested in learning more about the conference this year. And by far and away, the biggest trend, unsurprisingly, is AI and digital transformations. I mean, it's interesting because looking at last year, some of the sessions we ran were more kind of, I think it was sort of symbolized where we were in as a kind of a world, really, in terms of where we were looking ahead. It was all quite sort of top level and what might this mean for the future. And now we're kind of drilling a bit more down into the detail of what does this actually mean practically, and kind of, what are the considerations for things like academic integrity? What are the ethical considerations? What do we do about the potential of malpractice in different settings? And people are really starting to develop much more kind of sophisticated thinking around that. And of course, the challenges around that are developing day by day. So that came up as a big trend in the survey, and that's sort of one of our overarching themes this year is AI, digital and assessment. Where are we now? And kind of looking at opportunities and challenges. So for that, we're actually being joined by Liz Hardy and John Quill Lowe from the Open University, and they're being joined by Dr. Gray Mitten from NCFE. They did a piece of research into this sort of rapidly growing area called How Will Assessments Be Designed in the Future to Mitigate the Risk from Generative Tools, AI tools like ChatGPT. And that will look at sort of which assessment types are most vulnerable to the use of generative AI, and also how assessments can be best designed to safeguard academic integrity. So really looking forward to that session. I think that's going to be really interesting and hopefully very useful for people. And then we've got so another kind of key themes is the value of assessment literacy. So how do we support different stakeholder groups to have a better understanding of assessment, and how can that sort of support their interactions with assessment? And then obviously there's the kind of intersection of that with AI as well now. And so we're really, really pleased to be inviting, we've got a team joining us from the University College Dublin, which is Jennifer Keenahan, Mairead O'Reilly, I'm sorry, I probably said that name wrong, I'm so sorry, and Amy Lawrence, who is a 4th year structural engineering student there. And the team created a really, really interesting, innovative project, which is sort of in response to the rise of generative AI, and particularly in HE. They invited students to take part in a sort of podcast competition, which examined the impact of AI on 6 different types of assessment. And it was student-led. So each sort of team of students presented a different episode, and through that developed their assessment literacy and their kind of AI literacy at the same time. As they looked at closed book exams, lab reports, online exams, group projects, reflective assignments, and individual tasks. It's a fantastic podcast. I really recommend it. But they're joining us from Dublin to come and talk about that, which I'm really excited about. I think it's going to be really interesting, and particularly to have the student voice. So the podcast was called The Student Voice on AI and Assessment, which is so important, of course.
Yeah. And is that available publicly then? Can people access that through normal podcast
Yes, yeah, I can.
We love a podcast here.
Yeah, I'll share a link. I'll share a link with you after this. No problem.
Yeah, because I quite like, because I like to add them into the podcast player on the Test Community Network as well, so people can kind of pick and choose and move between different episodes. So that sounds really good. That sounds great. Anything else then? So in terms of the conference, any other content?
Yeah, we've got another fantastic keynote. So the third theme is maintaining validity through inclusive assessment. So as we talked about, our kind of EDIB course obviously is very much part of that strategy. And yeah, kind of looking at different themes, EDIB and assessment, digital accessibility and inclusion and wellbeing. And we're really pleased to be joined for our keynote for this section of the day is Dr. Paul Ian Campbell, who's the Associate Professor in Sociology of Race and Inclusion at the University of Leicester. And he's done a really interesting piece and very important piece of work on in which he created something called the Racially Inclusive Practice and Assessment Guidance Intervention. And he's going to be talking about that and how he the belief behind that is that HE assessment currently works unevenly for students of colour. And it looks at what practitioners can do to measurably reduce those, as he calls them, wicked inequities. And I think what's going to be really interesting about that session is, so he's talking about the framework, but he also talks about the actual impact and what to do with that knowledge once you have it, and how to move from sociological inquiry to actual measurable change in your assessment practice. So really, really pleased to be joined by him for that section. So we've got a lot of really interesting speakers. We've also, this year, we're running some taster workshops, which again were voted for by people responding to our survey. So we've got some of the kind of classics, we've got question writing, we've also got one on implementing sustainability principles in creating assessment, which I think is going to be really interesting. So yeah, plenty more besides all that, but don't want to take over the whole podcast.
No, it's good. Well, it's going to be a jam-packed 2 days. Was it just one day last year? Was it?
It was just one day. It was just one day, and actually, we had some feedback from people saying that they would have liked a bit more time to really get a chance to probably really get into the topics and discuss them a bit more, and have a bit more chance just for that kind of that free flow of discussion where you can kind of discuss it with your peers and with the speakers. So which we've tried to bring a bit more time for that into the conference this year, because it was jam-packed last year as well, and we think actually that learning is so important that you get just from sharing practice, and that's one of the things we really believe at the assessment network at Cambridge, is that by bringing practitioners from different sectors together, you can really kind of develop your understanding and learn from each other. So
yeah, one thing that I think the really good way about how the conference has been designed this year is that, when there's just standard talks and 10 minutes for questions at the end, usually the discussion's only just got going. But at the point that the person who's chairing it has to stop everything and then they go for a coffee break. So in this particular circumstance, I think we've created much longer periods for people to start exchanging ideas, so that conversation doesn't have to restart again. And I think that's a really handy way that the conference this year has been designed.
Excellent. Yeah. And how many people are you expecting? What's the kind of numbers?
I think, well, it's kind of because we're actually offering it hybrid, so you can join us in person or you can join us online. I think last year we had something like maybe 100 people online, and I think we had about 100 people in the room as well. But we're anticipating possibly slightly more online this year, because we're seeing quite a lot of people booking that way. And I think we might get around 150 people in person. But yeah, I mean, we've already had some bookings, interestingly, from a team of teachers from Uganda. We've had some university colleagues from Malta coming over, so who booked to join us. So I think perhaps because it's a 2-day event, there's a bit more time. Maybe people will sort of try to kind of blend it in with a little trip to Cambridge, have a look around the university as well.
You should definitely do guided tours as part of the experience.
Yeah. There are treats though.
We won't
reveal
planned.
Too much, but there are definitely treats planned.
There's a few treats. There may be an anniversary cake, which isn't the main treat, but it's a treat. And we've got some drinks planned for the first evening as well, for those of us who are joining us in person. So just for a bit more kind of informal networking. Yeah,
obviously you don't want to do that with the hybrid people, because nobody wants to see a load of people sat on a webcam.
Find your desk.
Well, it sounds exciting. I'd love to be able to join you. I'm actually I'm delivering a presentation on AI at a conference on the 30th, so I won't be able to. So I might try and join you hybrid on the first day if we can. But yeah, that sounds like an amazing amount of stuff that you've got going on. I think it's some great courses, some great, really good, useful ones, and the conference sounds as though it's really taken off. So congratulations to you and your team. I look forward to hearing more about it. Maybe it's kind of follow up from the findings from the event. That'd be quite good. But yeah, well, thank you very much for your time, and congratulations on the 20 years of as well. Is that what the cake's for?
It's partly for that, partly because everyone likes cake. But yeah.
Excellent. Well, very good luck with the conference. Very good luck with the courses, and we'll make sure all the notes and things go in the show notes, so all the links are in there as well. And lovely to speak to you, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tim.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Excellent. Thank you for that, Rosie. Thank you for that, Simon. That was brilliant. It was really great to hear about the amazing work that's going on there, and a really exciting conference. Shame I can't be there for the full 2 days, but I will try and join online. Don't forget, we have the AI Superpowers for Research webinars coming up. There'll be a link in the show notes, so you can sign up to that. And then there's also the leadership webinar, Riding the AI Wave, Negotiating Hype and Fear in Assessment. But lovely to see you all there. Some brilliant people signed up so far, so I look forward to lots of other people coming along as well. Well, that's it from me. Thank you very much, and I will see you next week. Yes, I will be around next week. I'm just checking. And yeah, you take care and stay well. Thanks. Bye-bye.